right, welcome. Today, we're diving into something, well, it's a pretty wild idea. We're going to connect the incredibly strange world of quantum physics with our deepest, most personal moral choices. I know, it sounds out there, but stick with me. Let's see how this all connects.
So, right off the bat, here's the big question driving this whole thing. Can the same rules that tell us how subatomic particles behave, these bizarre ideas like superposition and collapse, can they actually give us a new way to understand why we do what we do, especially when we're under pressure?
And here's the core idea in a nutshell. You know how a particle can exist in a cloud of potential states until it's measured, and then it just collapses into one reality? Well, the theory is that our own moral potential, all the good we could do, can also collapse into a single compulsive action when we're hit by the noise of life. Things like trauma, fear, or addiction. It's a really powerful metaphor, and we're about to unpack the whole thing.
Okay, so first things first, let's get the science down. To really get this parallel, we need to understand the fundamental quantum concept that makes this entire argument tick. This is it. It's called quantum decoherence. So imagine a particle just existing in multiple states at the same time, a superposition of possibilities. It could be here or there, or spinning up or spinning down. But the moment the outside world interacts with it, the moment it gets measured, that whole cloud of potential just snaps. It collapses into one definite state. The potential is lost, and you're left with a single, solid reality.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because the theory draws a direct line between the two. On the left, you've got your quantum system. On the right, the human psyche. The argument is that our moral potential, our ability to be patient or kind or wise, it exists in this state of superposition. But then pressure or trauma comes along and acts like a measurement, and boom, we collapse into a compulsive, reactive habit.
And this isn't just some abstract philosophical idea. The argument is that this collapse is something we feel. It's a deeply physical, lived experience. It's happening inside our bodies, inside our brains.
This is what that collapse feels like. It's that moment of pure compulsion where all our best intentions just seem to vanish into thin air. We know we shouldn't do it, but it feels like the possibility of choosing anything else has just evaporated, and we're just locked into this one single destructive path.
And this isn't just poetry either. We can actually see signs of this in the brain. Neuroscience shows us what's happening in these moments of collapse. Our dopamine systems, our reward systems, they go haywire. The prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain that's supposed to think about the long term, it gets weaker. We start to value a tiny reward right now way more than a huge reward later. The brain's variability to make a good choice gets hijacked. So, if that's the problem, what's causing it? Well, the theory points to two main things: the noise that surrounds us and the way we act as an observer, both of ourselves and of other people. And when we say noise, we're not just talking about sound. We're talking about the constant flood of stress, old wounds, the outrage on social media, the anxiety that bombards us every single day. All that interference destabilizes our inner world, our inner state of possibility, and it makes it way more likely that we're going to collapse into a simple reactive habit instead of making a real considered choice.
And here is where the author makes a really interesting leap, drawing on the Sermon on the Mount, but not as a bunch of rules to follow. Instead, it's framed as a kind of training manual for how to become a better, more stable observer of your own inner world. The idea is that these teachings are all about strengthening your internal coherence so you can stand against the noise and move from just reacting to acting with real integrity.
And this is absolutely crucial. How we look at other people literally matters. When we judge someone, we are, in a sense, performing a measurement. We're collapsing all of who they are, all their possibilities, down into their single worst act. But when we observe with mercy, we're refusing to make that measurement. We're holding open the space for them to be more than just their last mistake.
All right, so now we take this idea from just you, the individual, and we expand it to our relationships, using another totally mind-bending concept from quantum physics. You might have heard of this, quantum entanglement. Einstein famously called it spooky action at a distance. Basically, you can link two particles so they behave like a single system. And the wild part is, if you measure one, you instantly know the state of the other one, even if it's on the other side of the universe. They are fundamentally deeply connected.
So check out how this brings us to a radical new take on forgiveness. Judgment, step one, is a measurement that collapses someone.
But mercy, step 2, is a quantum act. It's the conscious choice not to measure, to refuse to collapse that other person's potential into a single data point. And when you do that, you're not just being nice, you are actively repairing the relational field between you and restoring possibility.
And this all builds to the most hopeful part of this whole metaphor, the idea that we can actually come back from a state of moral collapse, a kind of resurrection. Now, in this framework, resurrection isn't about a body magically coming back to life. It's about a person's potential for good being restored after everyone thought it was lost for good. And it doesn't happen alone in a vacuum. It happens when a loving community, through its entangled mercy, remembers someone back into wholeness. It refuses to let their collapse be the end of the story.
And this makes the whole idea incredibly practical, right? We can practice this resurrection every single day, every time we choose mercy instead of judgment, every time we create a safe space for someone to heal without shame, every time we help carry the weight of someone else's collapse so they don't have to face it all by themselves. And this quote just captures it all so perfectly. It's this beautiful synthesis of science and spirit. The idea that even after the worst kind of failure, the worst collapse, the possibility for a new song, for return to coherence, it's still there, held open by a web of interconnected love.
So in the end, we're left with this really profound question. In a world that is so quick to measure and judge and collapse people, what is our role? In our relationships, with our families, with our own attention? Did we act as the noise that forced a collapse? Or did we, with mercy, hold open the waveform for another?
Welcome to the deep dive, where we really try to slice through the complex and sometimes noisy world of information.
Yeah, bring you those surprising insights, the knowledge you won't soon forget.
Exactly. And today, we're embarking on a journey into, well, a truly ambitious idea. A question that might just reframe how you see yourself, maybe your struggles, even your spiritual life, perhaps.
Right.
What if the deepest concepts in, say, quantum physics, modern neuroscience, and ancient spiritual texts all pointed to the same profound truth about human choice, about suffering?
That's the big question.
Right. What if the very act of falling apart, addiction, hate, despair, what if it could be understood not just as a moral failing,
But it's something else.
yeah, as a physical phenomenon, maybe,
Yeah.
and crucially, even reversed?
It's a provocative thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
This deep dive is called Quantum Collapse in the Kingdom Within, and it offers, well, an extraordinary synthesis of ideas. We'll be exploring how the principles of quantum decoherence, the stuff usually associated with tiny subatomic particles.
Right, electrons and things.
Exactly. How that might actually mirror the human experience.
Yeah.
Our moral decisions, even ethical collapse.
And our guide for this fascinating exploration is a truly groundbreaking essay by Skylar Fiction. This piece does something, I think, quite remarkable. It synthesizes insights from, well, fundamental quantum mechanics, obviously,
Yeah.
but also cutting-edge research in quantum biology, discussing these fleeting quantum effects they're finding in, biological systems.
Right, in living things,
Yeah.
which is amazing in itself.
Totally. And then it brings in modern addiction, neuroscience, behavioral impulsivity,
So the brain science.
the brain science, and then masterfully weaves in gospel ethics, particularly drawing from the Sermon on the Mount from Matthew's Gospel. It's quite the intellectual tapestry.
It really is. And our mission today for you listening is to unpack this rich, interdisciplinary view.
Yeah.
We want to extract those memorable nuggets of knowledge, those surprising connections that make complex ideas, stick.
Help you grasp it quickly.
Exactly. Helping you quickly grasp how these seemingly disparate fields can illuminate the human condition in a new light. Ultimately, we aim to offer you a fresh vocabulary.
It's a new way to talk about it.
Yeah. For understanding human freedom, collapse, responsibility, and even, as the essay suggests, a grammar for resurrection.
Wow. Okay, grammar for resurrection. Let's jump right in then. Okay, let's start with the core idea then. Quantum collapse as moral decoherence. Many of us have, heard of quantum physics, but it can feel pretty abstract, right?
Definitely. It's weird stuff.
It is. But at its heart, though, is a foundational idea, the wave function.
Now, this isn't some, like, mystical energy field.
No, it's maths.
Right. It's a mathematical description of all the potential states a tiny particle could be in at any given moment.
Yeah.
Think of it like a cloud of possibilities. A particle isn't in one definite spot. It's kind of everywhere at once, in a sense. Undefined potential.
Exactly. You can imagine, say, a coin spinning in the air.
Yeah.
Before it lands, it's neither heads nor tails.
Yeah.
Right? It's in a state of potential for both. In quantum terms, a subatomic particle, like an electron, exists in a superposition. It might be spinning both clockwise and counterclockwise simultaneously.
Both at once.
Yeah, or be in multiple locations at once. It's like it's holding open this cloud of all its possible futures.
So it's undefined, full of potential until something happens.
Precisely. And that something is what physicists call decoherence.
Decoherence, okay.
This is the process where that cloud of potential states collapses. It just snaps into one singular observable outcome.
How does that happen?
The moment you observe it or it interacts with its environment, even a single stray photon hitting it, that delicate quantum superposition is destroyed.
Gone.
Gone. The particle's forced to choose one state, like that spinning coin finally landing on heads. The environment, through its interaction, essentially forces the system to make a decision, collapsing its vast potential into one fixed reality.
So if I'm getting this right, these incredibly delicate quantum states, they're just destroyed by their surroundings, by the noise or the measurement of the environment.
That's the idea, yeah. Noise is the key term.
And this essay proposes that this process, this decoherence, serves as an incredibly powerful metaphor and potentially even a neurophysiological correlate for understanding what happens when our human moral potential collapses. That feels like a significant leap, though. How do we bridge that gap from particles to, people?
It's a crucial question, and the essay really takes it seriously. Think about the human experience. We, too, exist in a kind of superposition of the self, right?
How do you mean?
Well, in any given moment, faced with a difficult situation, you have the potential to respond with patience or anger, with generosity or selfishness, with courage or fear. That's our inner cloud of moral possibilities.
Right, I see. The different ways we could act.
Exactly. But in our modern lives, we're constantly immersed in what the essay calls these noisy environments.
And I'm guessing that noise isn't just like loud sounds next door.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's the constant barrage of stimuli notifications popping up, the 24/7 news cycle, social media feeds scrolling endlessly. It's the endless distractions vying for our attention, the insidious pull of addictions, the subtle or overt threats we perceive all around us, the unresolved traumas maybe sticking with us from our past.
Okay, so it's that kind of noise, existential noise.
Yeah. And in such conditions, our sacred superpositions of the self, as the essay puts it, are constantly being reduced. Our choices narrow. Our possibilities decay. We lose that inner fluidity, that openness.
So it's like our inner quantum system is being overmeasured, overstimulated, constantly forced into a singular, often, let's be honest, less than ideal state.
That's a great way to put it.
The essay paints a really vivid picture. What once shimmered as inner coherence collapses into addictive cycles, reactive violence, or despairing apathy. It's that feeling of being stuck, isn't it? Of losing that fluidity of choice, of repeating the same patterns even when we desperately want to change. It's almost as if our potential for different responses just vanishes.
Evaporates. Precisely. And the aha moment here, for you, the listener, might be realizing that some of your personal struggles, maybe they are just character flaws or moral failings in the old sense.
But something else.
Yeah, maybe they're part of a process akin to this physical phenomenon, a kind of existential decoherence, where possibilities are prematurely shut down.
Wow.
And this isn't just philosophical musing. The essay highlights how quantum biology is starting to uncover potential physical parallels.
Really? In biology?
Yeah, research suggests that even at a biological level, things like ion channels in our cell membranes, tiny gates controlling electrical signals, might briefly exhibit fleeting quantum coherence.
Like tiny quantum events happening inside us.
For incredibly short moments, yes. But, crucially, they rapidly decohere due to environmental perturbations, thermal noise, things like that, just as researchers like Sifi and their colleagues have described.
So it's hinting at a tangible, physical basis for these ideas, connecting it to the very mechanisms of life and consciousness. It's not just a poetic metaphor, then. There might be something fundamental happening at the biological level that mirrors this quantum process.
It's a bold connection, definitely.
Suggesting that our ethical collapse isn't just abstract, it has echoes in the very fabric of our being, especially when it comes to things like jealousy, fear, hate, addiction, or self-harming behavior. Those states where we feel trapped. This brings us to a really striking idea from the essay, one that kind of stopped me in my tracks. The body collapses long before the soul gives up.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And it's not always a dramatic, visible event, is it? It's often described as a slow, internal unraveling, a quiet descent from a state of coherence into noise. What does that actually look like in our everyday lives?
Well, it's visible in many common human experiences, even if we don't always recognize it that way. Think about the addict who reaches again for what poisons him, even knowing the harm it causes. Or the compulsive eater, maybe. The doom scroller stuck in those endless feeds can't look away. The jealous lover reheating old narratives of suspicion, playing the same mental tape over and over.
Okay.
These aren't just, bad habits. Beneath the surface, there's often a deeper neurological breakdown happening. Neural circuits that once harmonized our desires and our capacity for restraint, they begin to misfire.
They get out of sync.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Our cognitive control systems, the parts of our brain responsible for planning and self-regulation, they degrade. Impulse loops tighten. It's almost as if, like an overexposed quantum system, the moral self decoheres into these reactive fragments. We lose our inner equilibrium, our balance.
So it's not simply a matter of willpower, then. There are fundamental changes happening within us neurologically. Can you explain a bit more about the neuroscience behind this collapse of decision-making integrity?
Absolutely. From a neuroscientific perspective, addiction, for instance, is not merely a behavioral habit. It's documented as a collapse of decision-making integrity.
Right.
This is driven by what researchers like Verdejo Garcia and their team have described as dysregulated dopamine systems. That's the brain's reward chemical. And an impaired valuation of future outcomes. Simply put, our brain's reward system gets out of whack.
So we can't value the future properly.
It becomes incredibly difficult. It makes it hard for us to value future benefits over those immediate urges. Repeated substance use or compulsive behaviors literally cause neuroadaptive changes in the prefrontal cortex, our executive decision-making center.
The boss of the brain.
Kind of, yeah. And the mesolimbic dopamine system. This weakens the brain's capacity to sustain that long-term coherence between our intentions, what we want to do, and our actions, what we actually do.
That's a critical distinction. It makes sense that it's so hard to break these cycles if the very architecture of our brain is changing. It's not just in our heads, it's in our neurons.
Precisely.
You mentioned impaired valuation of future outcomes. Is that what the essay refers to as delay discounting?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Delay discounting is the scientific term for a preference for immediate rewards despite significant long-term costs.
We all do that sometimes, right? The dessert now.
We all experience it to some extent, sure. Choosing dessert now over a healthier meal plan for tomorrow, maybe. But it's drastically exaggerated in those with substance use disorders, as studies by Noel, Bortolato, and Madden clearly illustrate.
So the future just seems less real, less important.
Effectively, yes. You're trading a tiny immediate hit for huge future consequences because the brain's ability to see and value that future reward has been compromised by the addictive process.
So this biological collapse seems to draw a really direct parallel to our quantum physics concept, back to decoherence.
It does, doesn't it? Remember, a quantum system, when left undisturbed, maintains superposition, that state of possibility, ambiguity, potential.
There's no cloud of options.
Right. But interaction with the environment, be it thermal noise, photons, or simply measurement, destroys this fragile coherence. It forces a choice.
Okay.
Just as Safey and their colleagues describe how ion channels in biological membranes can briefly sustain quantum coherence before environmental interference rapidly drives them into classical fixed states.
So the potential vanishes.
Right. So too can the human being. When we're exposed to constant stress, unresolved trauma, or just prolonged emotional chaos, we lose that inner coherence. We lose the ability to dwell in moral possibility in the what-ifs, and instead, we collapse into compulsive actuality.
Into the rut.
Into the rut, exactly. It's not about what could be anymore, but what is, often a less desirable, more reactive state we can't seem to escape.
This raises a really important question, and the essay takes a bold step here, shifting our understanding of sin. From a theological perspective, it suggests sin isn't just a legal transgression like breaking a rule. It's framed instead as an entropic reduction, like a loss of order or quantum spiritual decoherence. How does that interpretation change things?
It changes everything. Potentially. If we look at Jesus' teachings in the Sermon on the Mount, for example, in Matthew 5,
Yeah.
he's not just condemning external behavior like murder or adultery. He's targeting the inner domain of collapse,
Going deep.
much deeper. He says, "You have heard it said, but I say to you." He's addressing those whose inner coherence is already compromised by fear, by lust, by anger.
The inner state, not just the outer act.
Exactly. He's not calling for mere suppression of these feelings, like just bottling them up. He's calling for a fundamental restoration for the inner self to be re-cohered around mercy, patience, nonviolence.
Recohere. There's that word again.
Yeah. And this coherence isn't passive. It must be actively maintained even in the presence of all that noise we talked about, the stuff that can lead us to unravel.
And what are these specific decohering agents in our moral field? What specifically causes this inner collapse, according to the essay?
Well, it identifies things like hate, fear, and jealousy as powerful decohering agents.
Okay.
They enter the moral field like photons scattering quantum systems, causing the self to resolve prematurely into lesser, more reactive forms, less than who we could be.
Can you give an example, like jealousy?
Sure, take jealousy. It isn't just an emotion. It literally hijacks parts of the brain, like the amygdala, which is involved in fear and emotional processing, and the ventral striatum, linked to reward and motivation. This induces patterns of obsessive thought and what neuroscientists call reward prediction errors, meaning our brain starts predicting a negative outcome like betrayal, even if there's no logical reason, and then gets stuck in that anxious, suspicious loop. The once whole self becomes divided. Fragmented, yeah. Past, future, and present become unreconcilable. The inner observer, the part of us that can reflect and choose calmly, becomes corrupted. So, sin, in this light, becomes not merely disobedience, but the loss of this internal quantum unity, this integrity of the self, fragmented by these powerful consuming emotions.
Wow, that's a heavy picture. But is there any hope then? If we collapse into these reactive states, is it permanent? Is coherence gone forever?
This is where the essay offers a really crucial glimmer of hope. Even in this state of collapse, the system remembers.
Remembers what?
Remembers its potential, perhaps. Research on quantum-assisted ion selectivity, like that by Matarez and their team, shows that these biological systems tend to oscillate between coherence and collapse, depending on environmental conditions and internal thresholds.
So it's not always a one-way street.
It suggests not. Just as ion channels can return to function after decoherence, perhaps so too can the human spirit. The kingdom within, though momentarily reduced, may be even silenced. It may still pulse with latent coherence. The potential remains. If the environment shifts, if the noise lowers, if the observer changes their focus.
Things can change back.
Things can change. It's a powerful idea. That even when we feel completely broken down, there's an echo of our true, coherent self still within, waiting for the right conditions to reemerge. There's still possibility.
That potential for return is really, really hopeful. Now let's pivot a bit to the dynamic forces at play here. The role of noise, which we touched on, and the observer.
Right, these two are crucial.
In quantum systems, noise isn't merely background sound or static. It's an active participant, right? It disturbs, entangles, and ultimately collapses a system.
It's the great destroyer of quantum states.
And in the human context, this noise isn't just auditory. You said it's psychic, cultural, spiritual. Can you give us more concrete examples of what this human noise looks like day to day?
Yeah, think about it. That relentless stream of guilt-ridden memories, maybe, from past mistakes we can't let go of. The pervasive glow and endless scroll of our screens, constantly demanding attention. Inherited family scripts that dictate our behavior without us even realizing it.
Like unconscious patterns.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even basic hunger cues when they become overwhelming and drive compulsive behavior. Then there are the relentless TikTok comments, old traumas resurfacing unexpectedly, unspoken threats in relationships or at work, societal expectations pressing down on us.
Wow, it's a lot.
It is. All of these enter through every pore of the self, constantly interfering with our inner coherence, our peace. So what is noise in the moral domain, really? The essay defines it as existential interference.
Okay.
These are the conditions that collapse our moral openness, our ability to dwell in possibility, to choose freely into a reactive singular identity, often one we don't even like.
It's the constant pressure to define ourselves, maybe, to act immediately, to resolve ambiguity, often without careful consideration, forcing our internal wave function to collapse prematurely.
That's a good way to frame it. It pushes us into reactivity.
So it's not just annoying, it's actively destructive to our inner state, to our potential. what does this noise actually look like in the brain? Is it measurable?
In addiction neuroscience, yes, this noise is visible in brain scans and activity patterns. It manifests as a hypofunction of the prefrontal cortex.
Meaning it's underactive.
Right, that executive control center isn't working as well as it should. And this is coupled with hyperactivity of subcortical reward systems, as Noel and their colleagues describe. The reward circuits are dialed way up.
So less control, more craving.
Basically, yes.
Hmm.
The person struggling with addiction isn't just making poor choices. The very architecture of choice itself becomes corrupted. Cognitive control networks, especially in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, are literally unable to exert their stabilizing influence effectively.
They lose their grip.
They do. And in this fragile state, even minor environmental triggers, an advertisement for alcohol, a stressful memory, even just being near a place associated with substance use act as potent noise agents, precipitating a collapse back into compulsive behavior. The system is so primed, so fragile, that the smallest disturbance can send it reeling.
That paints a picture of extreme vulnerability. It really helps understand why relapse can happen so easily. But that's only half the story, isn't it? The noise. The other half concerns the observer. In the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, it's the observer who collapses the wave function. How does that translate to the human condition? Is it about us having magic powers?
No, not quite magic powers. It doesn't mean our consciousness magically controls external particles directly. Instead, it highlights that the act of measurement, the act of attention, destroys ambiguity.
Okay.
The moment we observe a quantum system closely, we interfere with it, forcing it into a definite state. The moral parallel here is striking and maybe a little unsettling.
How so?
What we observe in ourselves becomes more real. What we pay attention to gets amplified. And conversely, what we do not observe, what we ignore or deny within ourselves, becomes unstable, vulnerable to collapse, perhaps in ways we don't intend.
So our attention, or lack thereof, becomes a powerful force in shaping our inner reality, not just for ourselves, but maybe for others too.
Exactly. It directs the energy, you could say.
So our internal attention shapes our inner world. This is where the essay brings in the Gospel of Matthew again, saying it's often misread as just a list of rigid rules. But it argues it provides an extraordinary template for coherent moral observation. Jesus repeatedly emphasizes inwardness, right?
Yes, constantly pointing inward. It's not merely refraining from murder, but reconciling the anger that leads to it. Matthew 5.22.
The root cause.
Right. Not just avoiding adultery, but actively observing the lustful patterns within. Matthew 5.28. This is attention as sacred observation, where the self becomes both a quantum system being observed and the observer doing the observing.
An active internal gaze. That's a powerful way to think about self-awareness.
It is. And this leads us to a crucial ethical insight. What about judging others? Jesus' command, judge not that you be not judged, Matthew 7.1, takes on a kind of quantum significance here. To observe another person with condemnation, with harsh judgment, is essentially to collapse them into a singular fixed state, to reduce their moral wave function to just their perceived fault or failing. It says, you are only this mistake.
You define them by their worst moment.
Exactly. But to observe with mercy, with compassion, is to preserve their potential, to leave their possibilities open. It allows room for transformation, for them to be more than their failure.
So just as decoherence in physical systems is accelerated by measurement, judgment in interpersonal systems accelerates moral collapse. You're effectively locking someone into a state, rather than allowing for the possibility of change or redemption. It's a powerful act of reducing someone's potential, maybe even contributing to their stuckness.
It's a heavy responsibility, isn't it? How we see others matters. This interplay between noise and observer also has startling parallels in quantum cognition and biophysical coherence research.
Like the ion channels again?
Yeah, Safi and their team, for instance, demonstrate that coherence in ion channels is highly sensitive to the nature and timing of environmental interaction, how they're measured or disturbed.
Okay.
And Matarez and colleagues even suggest that biological systems may have evolved to exploit brief windows of coherence before collapse, a kind of temporal sacredness embedded in life itself.
A sacred window. And in the spiritual domain, this brief window is the moment of choice, isn't it?
That's the idea. It's that blink before the reaction, the breath before the angry reply, that tiny pause where freedom exists.
And this sacred moment can be preserved or shattered, depending entirely on the nature of the observer, either our internal observer or how others observe us.
Exactly. If the observer or someone else's Traumatized, distracted, addicted, their internal state is chaotic. They effectively become noise, precipitating collapse in themselves or the person they're observing. Their internal state is too unstable to hold the space for possibility. But if the observer is attuned, merciful, mindful, Christ-like, as the essay puts it, they preserve the coherence of the moral field. They hold open the space for possibility for a different outcome.
So the healing of the self isn't merely about modifying behavior, changing what we do on the outside.
No, it goes deeper.
It's about becoming a coherent observer, internally stable.
Yes. And this requires practices that actively reduce internal noise. Things like meditation, maybe fasting, confession, therapy, prayer. It's about cultivating inner quiet.
And it also demands reframing our perception of others, right? So our gaze stabilizes rather than collapses them.
Precisely. In a world saturated with viral shame and algorithmic judgment, practicing that kind of merciful observation is truly revolutionary. It's an act of moral heroism, you could say, holding space for potential.
So we've talked a lot about the collapse, the noise, the observer effect. Now let's explore the path back. Cultivating coherence. This brings us to a really crucial question. Can coherence truly return once it's lost?
Yeah, the big question of hope.
Because classically, in quantum physics, coherence lost is coherence gone, right? Once a wave function collapses, its entangled superpositions, those delicate possibilities, they vanish irreversibly.
That's the standard view, yes. Once measured, the quantum magic is over for that system.
But in living systems, and the essay powerfully suggests, in moral consciousness, there seem to be echoes, residual structures, feedback loops that hint at something more than finality. What are these quantum echoes? Can something really come back?
It's a fascinating area, and maybe less bleak than classical physics suggests. While standard quantum mechanics often views decoherence as irreversible, the essay draws on research like that by Safey and their team again.
The ion channels.
Yes. They report that selectivity filters in ion channels can maintain memory-like patterns in ion flow due to something called residual phase entanglement.
Okay, what does that mean in plain English?
It means that even after coherence seems lost, there's a subtle imprint left behind, a kind of memory in the system's relationship with its environment that influences future behavior. These biological substrates, in effect, function as memory coils.
So they don't explicitly store data like a computer?
No, but they shape future interactions based on past collapses. This suggests that coherence, in both a moral and maybe even a biological sense, isn't just permanently lost. It can potentially be restored, or at least a new form of it can emerge.
So healing isn't simply a reversal to a prior innocent state, like hitting rewind.
No, it's more like a resynchronization, a return to a higher, maybe more complex, transformed harmony, carrying the lessons learned.
And theologically, this deeply resonates with the concept of repentance, doesn't it? Or metanoia in the biblical sense.
Exactly. Metanoia means to change one's mind or turn around. It's not about forgetting the past, erasing the collapse.
No.
It's about remembering it differently, transforming its impact on the present and future. The soul, the essay suggests, acts like a phase-coherent filter. Even after moral collapse, it can influence future behavior through attuned sensitivity and new alignments. It's about carrying the imprint of the past without being rigidly bound by it.
From a neurobehavioral perspective, then, recovery from collapse, say, from addiction, involves the painstaking retraining of prefrontal regulatory circuits.
Yeah, rebuilding that control center.
And the resynchronization of reward, control, and interoceptive networks, as Verdero Garcia and colleagues explain it. Interoceptive means awareness of internal body states, right?
Yes, tuning back into your own body signals. Simply put, addiction, fundamentally, isn't just a failure of willpower. It's a disruption of the brain's ability to regulate temporal coherence.
Temporal coherence, what's that?
Our capacity to choose distant, more beneficial rewards over immediate destructive cravings. It's a breakdown in our ability to perceive and act effectively across time. The future feels unreal. The past dictates the present.
So redemption, in this context, becomes temporal healing. It's about restoring our relationship with time, making future possibilities feel real and achievable again.
Beautifully put. And the essay argues that practices like meditation, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, fasting, prayer, these have all been shown neurologically to enhance frontal limbic connectivity.
Strengthening the connection between control and emotion reward centers.
Exactly, which restores the timing and salience of internal cues. It helps us notice the urge before we act and value the long-term goal. In quantum terms, these interventions actively reduce decohering noise.
Quieting the inner chaos.
Right, and enhance self-observation fidelity, allowing us to observe ourselves more clearly, less reactively, and act more coherently. It's a proactive way to maintain or rebuild our inner quantum state.
The Sermon on the Mount, viewed in this light, is just rich with these kinds of temporal strategies, isn't it?
Absolutely. When Jesus says, "Do not be anxious about tomorrow," Matthew 6.34, it's not just feel-good emotional advice. It's a profound coherence directive. A coherence directive. Anxiety collapses time. It forces the mind to exist in these fragmented simulations of imagined, often negative futures. We get lost in worry.
Yeah.
Trust, by contrast, restores present-centered coherence. It allows new choices to arise from place of stability right here, right now, free from the crushing weight of past regret or future fear.
Yeah.
It opens up the present moment.
But this recoherence isn't just an individual struggle, is it? The essay introduces this really evocative idea of fields of mercy, suggesting that beyond the individual, coherence can emerge in fields, dynamic environments that shape behavior through resonance. This ties into quantum field theory, where particles aren't isolated objects, but excitations in a shared interconnected field.
Exactly. And in spiritual terms, the essay argues this is mercy. Mercy is a field phenomenon. It cannot exist in isolation. It needs space, relationship.
How does it radiate?
It radiates through observation, that non-judgmental gaze we talked about, through presence, through embodiment. When Jesus says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy," Matthew 5.7, he's articulating a kind of nonlinear feedback loop.
Like mercy creates more mercy.
Yes, mercy isn't just transactional, like, I forgive you, you forgive me. It's generative coherence, a reinforcement of moral superposition, of possibility across relational space. It builds on itself.
And neuroscientific studies on compassion meditation even show that this interpersonal coherence isn't just metaphorical talk.
No, it's measurable. Practicing loving-kindness meditation actually alters heart rate variability. It increases activity in the insula, that brain region involved in self-awareness and social emotion, and it modulates mirror neuron systems, as Bortolano and Madden described.
So my internal state can literally affect your physiology.
In subtle ways, yes. One's internal coherence physically affects the physiological and moral coherence of others nearby. Your internal state has a ripple effect. Your calm can calm others. Your anxiety can agitate others.
Wow, this means that healing the world isn't necessarily about fixing all the broken systems instantly, which feels overwhelming.
Right.
But maybe it's about each of us becoming a resonant node, a body of coherence in a collapsing field, radiating stability outwards just by managing our own inner state.
It's a powerful and maybe more achievable vision of how personal transformation can impact the collective. Start with yourself. Become a source of coherence.
This really brings us to a concept that truly challenges our everyday understanding of separation. Entangled ethics, or love beyond collapse.
Yeah, this is where it gets really spooky, as Einstein might say.
Right. Quantum entanglement is one of the most baffling and frankly beautiful phenomena in modern physics. When two particles become entangled, their states are intrinsically linked. Destinies intertwined.
No matter how far apart they are.
Miles, light years, it doesn't matter. Measuring one instantly affects the other. Einstein famously called it spooky action at a distance because it seemed to violate the speed of light limit.
But experiment after experiment has confirmed it. It's real. Entangled particles behave as one single system, even across vast distances.
Okay. And the essay asks, what happens if we take this seriously? Not just as a weird physical fact about tiny particles, but as a moral metaphor. Or maybe even more than a metaphor.
It's a profound leap.
And the conclusion it draws is stunning. To love someone is to be entangled. This goes far beyond mere poetry, it suggests.
How so? Where's the evidence beyond the metaphor?
Well, think about trauma theory, for example. There's clear evidence that human nervous systems become interpersonally wired. We co-regulate stress responses with people we're close to.
Like a baby calming in its mother's arms.
Exactly. Our heart rhythms can actually sync up. We mirror emotional states unconsciously. Empathy relies on this. Researchers like Bortolano and Madden highlight this deep interconnection. We are fundamentally not isolated islands.
It's why when someone we love is harmed, we hurt. When they collapse, we tremble. It resonates within us.
So our moral responsibility, then, isn't atomized. It's not just about my actions. It's inherently relational entanglement. Our ethical field inherently includes others, especially those with whom we share memory, wounds, or even just a shared silence, a shared history. It's a recognition of deep, unavoidable interconnectedness.
Jesus captures this quantum truth, perhaps, in his simplest, most profound command. Love your neighbor as yourself. Matthew 22.39.
Not as much as yourself, but as yourself.
Exactly, because in a deep sense, they are you, part of the same field. Love isn't a transaction across space, the essay argues. It's the recognition of entangled being, a profound shared reality. Acknowledging that the other's fate, their coherence or collapse, is inextricably linked to our own.
This has absolutely stunning implications for what the essay calls non-local guilt and non-local grace.
Non-local, like entanglement,
Yeah.
acting instantly across distance.
Right. In quantum terms, measuring one entangled particle instantly collapses the state of its partner, wherever it is. Morally, the essay suggests, when one person judges another harshly, it's not a neutral act happening just within the judge.
It affects the other person.
Yes, it's a moral measurement, a collapse-inducing observation that can instantly shift the judged person's state into shame, defensiveness, withdrawal. And crucially, the judge becomes entangled with the consequences of that collapse. Their own internal field shifts too, perhaps towards hardness or cynicism.
This is what Jesus warns about in Matthew 7.1, Ted 2, perhaps. With the measure you use, it will be measured to you. This isn't just simple karma, like what goes around comes around.
It's deeper.
It's entanglement symmetry. Collapse one node judge harshly, and the whole field shifts, including your own position within it. But here's the beautiful part, the flip side.
Yeah.
If guilt travels non-locally, so can grace. Forgiveness in this framework is the inverse of collapse. It's the refusal to measure, the decision to leave the wave function uncollapsed, to actively allow for future potential, despite past actions.
Wow. So when we forgive, we're not just letting something go for ourselves.
No. We restore the other's superposition. We allow them to be more than what they did, preserving their potential for growth and change. This isn't forgetfulness or pretending something didn't happen. It's field repair, an active restoration of possibilities, not just for them, but for the entire entangled system, including ourselves. It reopens the future.
Is it possible to actually model forgiveness in quantum terms? That seems like a stretch.
The essay suggests it might offer parallels. In decohered quantum systems, entanglement can sometimes be restored through complex techniques called quantum error correction or post-selection filtering.
Okay.
These are ways physicists try to identify the noise that caused the collapse and recover the pre-collapse correlations, the original entanglement, as researchers like Frost and their team describe.
And how does that map onto human interaction?
In moral systems, this corresponds perhaps to processes like honest confession, mutual empathy, narrative reintegration. We locate the noise, the misunderstanding, the hurt, name it, speak it, and reframe the connection in light of that understanding.
Like reconciliation.
Exactly. This process perfectly mirrors what theologians call reconciliation. And in Christian theology, particularly in Christ, this reconciliation isn't just personal, it's cosmic.
As in the quote from 2 Corinthians.
Right. God was reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting people's sins against them, 2 Corinthians 5.12. This is essentially quantum logic applied to human failure, the essay argues. The system doesn't ignore error, it absorbs it without collapse, refusing to fix the identity of humanity based on its worst actions.
That's a radical kind of grace.
It's a profound, nonviolent coherence, holding the tension without breaking.
So this entangled ethics demands a new anthropology, a whole new way of understanding what it means to be human.
Yes. The self is no longer seen as a closed, isolated system, like a billiard ball bouncing off others, but a semi-permeable wave function, constantly interacting, formed through relation, scarred through collapse, and healed through resonance and entanglement. We are not isolated particles bumping into each other. We are co-defined through attention, remembered through love, and changed through forgiveness. Our boundaries are fuzzy.
The soul, then, much like a quantum bit, a qubit, holds multiple potentialities simultaneously.
Until measured.
Right. Hate collapses these possibilities, fixing people into rigid categories: enemy, addict, failure. Mercy preserves them, leaving room for transformation, for surprise.
So Christ's ethics, turn the other cheek, forgive 70 times 7, love your enemy, these aren't just high ideals. They're described as coherent strategies.
Strategies for what?
Strategies that actively make room for moral superposition in others, even when we're tempted or even justified in reducing them to their worst actions or identities.
In this light, then, to love the enemy is not a heroic denial of justice or a passive acceptance of harm. That's often how it's criticized.
Right. But here, it's framed differently. It is a quantum gesture. Refusing to collapse their field with judgment, choosing instead to entangle your dignity with theirs, however risky that feels, and thereby preserving their potential for change. and for a different future for both of you.
It's a radical act of hope, holding open the possibility space. This really deepens our understanding of observation, but it also brings us back to that profound paradox we touched on earlier.
The observer effect.
Yeah. To observe is to interfere. To measure is to collapse. To love, maybe, is to risk collapse yourself through empathy. Yet our deepest human capacities, compassion, empathy, mercy, they require us to look closely, to bear witness, without destroying what we see, without collapsing the person into their suffering.
It's a tightrope walk.
Can we truly observe a system without reducing it? Can we bear witness to suffering without becoming noise ourselves, without getting overwhelmed or judgmental?
It's the ultimate ethical challenge, isn't it? How to be present without interfering negatively. The essay explores this through what it calls the neural architecture of mercy.
Okay, the brain basis of compassion.
Right. Compassion in the human brain isn't just a nice feeling or an abstract idea. It's a physical event. Neuroimaging studies, like those by Morita and colleagues, reveal that compassionate states activate distinct brain areas,
Which ones?
including the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, the anterior cingulate cortex, and the insular regions we know are associated with emotional regulation, self-awareness, and social cognition, understanding others' feelings and managing our own.
So these aren't just feel-good circuits that light up when we're being nice?
No, they're actively working to maintain a stable yet connected state. Critically, these networks don't just feel for others in a passive way.
They do something else.
They actively modulate self-other boundaries. They help us perceive suffering in another person without collapsing into it ourselves, without becoming completely overwhelmed by it.
So compassion is different from just raw empathy then.
Yes. The essay argues compassion is thus a coherence-preserving structure, unlike raw empathy, which can sometimes lead to emotional burnout because we feel with someone so intensely that we absorb their pain.
Right. Empathic distress.
Exactly. Compassion is emotionally stable. It holds its ground while extending care. In quantum terms, compassion acts as a stabilizing observer, present and aware, but non-collapsing. It witnesses without destroying.
It's a remarkable parallel for what it means to witness suffering without becoming overwhelmed or destructive ourselves, maintaining our own center while connecting. And what about our mirror neuron system? That sounds like a really physical substrate for this kind of interconnectedness, for feeling what others feel.
Indeed. The mirror neuron system, which underpins imitation, learning, and emotional resonance, definitely offers a neurological substrate for these entangled ethics.
How do they work again?
Mirror neurons fire both when we perform an action and when we observe another performing that same action. It creates a kind of shared experience at a neural level, letting us understand others' intentions and feelings intuitively.
But this system also poses a danger, right? Over-identification.
Exactly. If mirror activity is unregulated, if we don't have that compassionate buffer, it can lead to empathic distress rather than coherent compassion. We just drown in the other person's feelings.
Is that why trauma workers, nurses, clergy often experience compassion fatigue?
That's thought to be a major factor. Their mirror systems entangle deeply, but sometimes without sufficient insulation or regulatory capacity, causing them to absorb the suffering they witness day after day. They decohere, in a sense.
So how do we prevent that kind of collapse in ourselves while still trying to help others? How do we stay open but stable?
Well, recent studies, highlighted by Faraji and their team, show that practices like mindfulness and specific meditative traditions can actually modulate these mirror responses, especially in brain areas like the insula and somatosensory cortex. They seem to allow observers to remain attuned, connected, but also centered, maintaining a healthy boundary while still engaging with suffering. This supports the idea that compassion isn't just something you have or don't have, it's a trainable skill. You can cultivate that stable observing stance.
So in quantum terms, the compassionate observer behaves like a weak measurement device. That's a fascinating analogy.
Yeah, like extracting information from the system, knowing someone is suffering, understanding it without fully collapsing it or being consumed by it. This, the essay argues, is spiritual physics. This is gospel geometry. It's the structure of mercy.
This leads me to think about the gaze of Christ again. What would it actually feel like to be seen with this kind of non-collapsing observation?
It's a profound question, isn't it? What would it mean to be seen fully, warts and all, without being instantly judged and reduced to your worst act?
Yeah.
Again and again, the Gospels show Jesus engaging in precisely this non-collapsing observation. He looks at the woman caught in adultery, famously surrounded by accusers ready to stone her, but he doesn't condemn her. Instead, he offers grace and a path forward. Go and sin no more, John 8:11. He acknowledges the collapse but doesn't define her by it.
He leaves possibility open.
Exactly. He sees Zacchaeus, the despised tax collector, up the tree.
Oh, yeah.
He calls him by name, invites himself to his house, looking past the public shame, Luke 19:5. He regards Peter's devastating betrayal after the Last Supper with silence, not retaliation, Luke 22:61.
That silence must have been powerful.
Immensely. His gaze is disruptive, not because it wounds, but precisely because it refuses to collapse the person into their worst act. It sees their entangled state, their past failure, their present shame, and their future potential, and actively holds it open, holds the superposition.
This gaze is more than kindness. The essay calls it field reformation. To be seen this way is to become possible again, to have your potential reaffirmed. And this links back to Jesus' teaching. When you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen, Matthew 6. You said this is presented as more than just spatial instruction.
Yes, the essay calls it a physics lesson.
Physics? How?
The inner room, the quiet place, is conceptualized as a decoherence-free zone, a place where the external measurements, the judgments, the demands, the noise of the world stop. A sanctuary from collapse.
And does neuroscience back this up, the idea of inner, quiet, fostering coherence?
Actually, yes. Modern neuroscience confirms that silent, contemplative practices like meditation or quiet prayer tend to increase frontal midline theta activity in the brain, which is associated with focused attention and calm.
Okay.
And they decrease default mode network chatter. That's the brain network active during mind-wandering and self-referential thought, often linked to rumination and anxiety.
So it quiets the mental noise.
Right. Producing what some researchers, including Saifi and Matarez and their teams, call metastable coherence, a brain state that's balanced, stable but also flexible, between order and openness.
And in this stillness, the essay suggests we become capable of that compassionate observation, not just of others, but crucially, of ourselves.
Yes. We can watch the shame rise without fusing to it. We feel the craving surge without automatically obeying it. We become like Christ in that moment, able to see clearly, even the messy parts, and still choose mercy, maintaining our own coherence in the face of internal noise.
So to become a coherent observer, it means rejecting both collapse, getting sucked into the reaction, and indifference, just shutting down or looking away.
Just holding the tension.
Gazing with truth and love simultaneously. This isn't neutrality. The essay calls it active containment. It means actively cultivating inner conditions that reduce moral noise. Maybe simplicity in lifestyle, sobriety, silence, study, practices that ground us. It means becoming a kind of quantum priest, maybe sanctifying the moment of choice through our intentional, compassionate attention.
Such observers, people who can do this, are rare perhaps, but their presence stabilizes others. They don't necessarily fix things, but they hold open the space for others to heal themselves. They become wounded healers, or, in the essay's quantum terms, entangled stabilizers. People whose very presence helps maintain coherence in a chaotic world just by how they observe.
This concept of entangled stabilizers, people who hold coherence, naturally leads us to think about how whole communities can act as decoherent shields.
Right, scaling it up from the individual.
This brings us to our section on fields that hold. Human beings aren't isolated particles just bouncing around. The essay paints us as relational waveforms entangled across breath, rhythm, and shared attention.
It's a poetic image, but neuroscience seems to confirm that something like this happens.
Yeah.
Coherence can be shared.
Oh.
When individuals engage in activities like group chanting, synchronized movement like dancing or marching, or even collective silence in a shared space, their brains often exhibit interbrain synchrony.
Their brain waves align.
Yes, a measurable alignment of oscillatory patterns across multiple people. This has been observed in fMRI and EEG studies, looking at things like choral singing, dance, group meditation, even just attentive audiences, as research by Faraji and Matarez and their teams has shown. The group effectively becomes, in a sense, a single waveform, a shared state space where individual coherence is amplified and stabilized by the collective.
So this resonance literally stabilizes the individual members of the group. That's a powerful idea for community.
It truly is. As studies noted in journals like Frontiers in Behavioral Neuroscience suggest, social synchrony enhances resilience to stress and reduces individual entropy, as Faraji and their team found. Basically, being in sync with others makes you more robust.
Less likely to fall apart under pressure.
Exactly. This mirrors a crucial principle in quantum coherence. Entangled systems, Systems that are linked are often more resistant to decoherence, to collapse, than isolated ones. When you're part of a coherent field, you're less likely to collapse entirely on your own.
So community then is a form of moral physics. That's a striking phrase.
It is. It suggests community lowers entropy, protects fragile potentials within individuals, and holds that sacred window of choice open for people who might otherwise collapse under the weight of their own noise or the world's pressure. It's not just a social structure. It's a field of stabilizing force.
And this concept seems to extend even to sacred architecture. The essay suggests that early religious structures, thinking way back to Göbekli Tepe or Stonehenge or maybe the tabernacle described in Exodus, weren't just built for instruction or performing rituals. They were built for resonance, designed intentionally to shift cognitive states and foster collective coherence. For example, think of the incredibly precise instructions for the Exodus tabernacle, with its specific curtains, rings, layers of materials.
Very detailed.
The essay suggests this wasn't just ritualism, it was, in a sense, environmental coherence engineering. Designing a space to foster a certain inner state, the Holy of Holies, shielded by veils, specific rituals, silence, and awe, functioned almost like a decoherence-free subspace, a zone of pure potential.
And modern neuroscience parallels this, showing that brain coherence is enhanced by certain kinds of environments.
What?
Low stimulation, high-pattern environments, quiet spaces with rhythmic cues like chanting or music, symbolic focus points like mandalas or icons, and predictable boundaries. Think of traditional churches, zendo halls, sweat lodges.
Spaces designed for focus.
Right. They're not incidental. They are biophysical architectures of attention. They teach us, perhaps implicitly, that to preserve moral superposition, that inner potential, the soul needs structure without violence, rhythm without rigidity, and silence without abandonment. They are intentional spaces designed to reduce noise and foster internal stability.
This leads to the really practical idea of quantum forgiveness and collective collapse. When individuals within a community collapse, maybe into relapse, violence, or despair, the community faces a choice, doesn't it?
Yes, a critical choice.
They can judge, excommunicate, shame, which the essay argues only accelerates decoherence, pushing the person further away.
Making the collapse worse.
Yeah. Or they can choose to become a buffering field, surrounding the person, maybe confessing together, weeping together, stabilizing the one who falls, holding them in the field.
This was arguably at the heart of early Christian practice. If you look at the book of Acts, believers held all things in common. They shared meals, they prayed together, and as the book of James records, they confessed sins to one another.
That takes trust.
A lot of trust. This wasn't utopia. It was perhaps ethical phase alignment, a resonance pattern capable of preventing individual collapse through shared load-bearing and mutual support. Such communities, in different forms, still exist today.
Like where?
Think of recovery groups like AA, Indigenous Healing Circles, mutual aid networks, monasteries, all applying a kind of quantum ethics, maybe unconsciously. No one is left alone at the brink of decoherence. The group holds the space.
And these structures function not by controlling behavior directly, but by holding attention, by bearing witness without collapsing the individual with judgment.
Exactly. They become field churches, not just buildings, but patterns of coherent regard, of merciful observation that shield individuals from the overwhelming noise of the world or their inner turmoil.
But what about today? In our hyper-connected, yet often isolating world, the essay talks about glitch sanctuaries and algorithmic noise.
Right. Because modern life, with its endless TikTok loops, doom-scrolling, algorithmic rage baiting, it often feels engineered to destroy coherence, doesn't it?
It really does. The attention economy thrives on collapse, on keeping us agitated and clicking.
So in this hyper-digital context, the essay suggests sacred community must evolve. It has to become portable, maybe peer-to-peer, less reliant on physical buildings alone.
So how does that look today? What are these glitch sanctuaries?
Maybe it looks like online support groups offering anonymity and connection, encrypted confession apps for seeking counsel privately, sonic liturgies listened to on headphones during a commute. What the essay calls glitch gospel networks communities forming in unexpected digital spaces. These are emergent coherence systems, perhaps. Grassroots temples built from code, breath, shared vulnerability, and longing. What truly matters isn't the form, but the function.
Does it stabilize attention?
Exactly. Does it preserve moral openness? Does it offer stillness without abandoning the storm of modern life? Does it create a field of mercy in a digital desert? That's the test.
Ultimately, then, the message is that each person has the potential to become a coherence node, a small decoherence shield in their local system, their family, their workplace, their friend group.
Yes. And not by having all the answers or being perfect,
How then?
but simply by refusing to collapse others into fixed judgments, by listening without rushing to conclusions or offering easy fixes, by holding sacred space in ordinary places, classrooms, kitchens, prisons, parks, just being a non-collapsing presence.
In systems theory, this is called distributed buffering, spreading the load. In Christian terms, it's bearing one another's burdens, Galatians 6.2. In quantum physics, maybe it resonates with entangled resilience.
We don't escape collapse alone. We need these resonant fields, woven from mercy, silence, presence, and rhythm. The church, at its truest, the essay implies, is not a building or an institution primarily.
What?
It is a coherence-preserving organism, a dynamic, living field designed to hold potential open.
This leads us to the ultimate hope presented in the essay, re-coherence, framed as resurrection, as quantum mercy.
The return from collapse.
Yeah. There's a mystery beneath every moment of return, isn't there? The addict who says no just for today after years of struggle, the mother who genuinely forgives a deep, seemingly unforgivable wrong, the person who walks back from the brink of despair, choosing life.
These moments feel profound.
They do. They aren't ordinary acts. They seem to defy entropy. They reverse the momentum of collapse. They are, if we can dare to use the word, resurrections in miniature.
And in quantum terms, the essay suggests these are recoherences, states once thought lost collapse that somehow return, not identically perhaps.
Not the same as before.
No, but transformed. Like photons that vanish into uncertainty only to reappear later, maybe entangled with something new, changed by the journey through the noise. Resurrection isn't mere reanimation, going back to exactly how things were. It's a restored possibility, a new potential emerging from what was broken.
That's a crucial distinction. It's not a rewind button, but a recreation, a new beginning. But classically, as we said, decoherence in quantum systems is considered irreversible. Once the wave function collapses, the pure superposition is lost. How can recoherence even be possible? Where does the potential come back from?
This is where emerging research in quantum error correction offers a fascinating, if highly technical, parallel. As Alvarez and their team discuss, partial recoherence is possible under certain conditions.
How?
Through using entangled redundancies and clever correction protocols, lost quantum information can sometimes be reconstructed, not from the collapsed system itself, because the information is gone from there.
But from where?
But crucially, from the relationships surrounding it, from the entangled network it was part of, the pattern held elsewhere.
Wow. That's more than a physics trick. The essay maps that directly to the soul, to human experience.
Yes. We don't resurrect, we don't find healing by somehow returning to our pre-fall, pre-collapse state. That's gone.
So how do we?
We resurrect through the coherence held in others, in the memory, the story, the love that never collapsed, that held on to our potential even when we couldn't. The relational matrix preserves what the isolated self could not.
That's a powerful and deeply moving thought. So it means our healing, our resurrection, isn't just an individual journey we muscle through alone.
Precisely. It's relational. Think of Jesus after the crucifixion. He returns, but not as he was before. He bears wounds. He walks through walls. He's known not just by face, but by breaking bread, by his breath, by his presence felt within the community. His resurrection isn't a rewind. The essay frames it as a quantum retrieval through entangled love, a return to possibility mediated through the love and memory of those who knew him, who held his potential even in their own despair and doubt.
And if the body itself is a kind of waveform, a dynamic field of probabilities and potentials, then trauma is collapse.
Yes. Trauma fixes what should be fluid. It locks potential into rigid, repetitive patterns, whether that's addiction, PTSD, flashbacks, chronic
The
shame.
body keeps the score, stuck in the past collapse.
Right. Resurrection, then, isn't magic. It's the reinitiation of quantum openness, a process of freeing that locked-up potential, allowing the waveform to become fluid again.
And neuroscience supports this beautifully, doesn't it? Recovery from trauma involves neuroplasticity.
The brain's ability to rewire itself.
Right. The regrowth of flexible circuits that allow for new responses, new ways of being, adaptability. Practices like EMDR, deep meditation, somatic therapies, community care, these have been shown to restore default mode network connectivity.
That network involved in our sense of self and story.
Yeah. Enabling narrative flexibility, the ability to tell a different story about ourselves and our past, and fostering a future-oriented self-concept, as Noel and colleagues discuss. This is brain-based recoherence.
The hardware changing to support the new software, so to speak.
Exactly. The body, like the soul, isn't condemned to collapse forever. Given the right conditions, care, rhythm, meaning, relational safety, it can resurrect its own waveform. It can find new patterns of health and wholeness.
And the mechanics of grace in this model seem to mirror this quantum memory recovery. Just as lost quantum information can be reconstructed by its relational patterning, its entanglement, a broken person can be remembered into being, not by sheer self-will alone, but by being held in a field of grace, by being seen with that non-collapsing gaze.
By someone else holding their potential for them.
Yes. To forgive someone, truly forgive, is to say, you collapsed, I see that, but I never measured you down to only that. I refuse to fix you in that broken state. I remember the potential.
This is precisely what Jesus seems to mean when he says to the woman caught in adultery, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." John 8:11. He doesn't erase the sin, the collapse.
No, he acknowledges it.
But he refuses to fix it as her entire identity. He holds open the waveform of her potential for a different future. This mercy rescues not by denial, but by entanglement, by refusing to cut the connection.
It's beautifully illustrated, the essay suggests. In the Eucharist or communion, bread breaks, seems destroyed, and yet becomes sustenance for a community. The broken coherence of the self, when shared in love, becomes a new body, a new re-cohered entity. Brokenness transformed into connection.
Today, though, the essay suggests this kind of glitch resurrection must happen in the noise, in the midst of it all.
Yeah, we don't get quiet rooms easily.
No. Social algorithms constantly collapse us into outrage, categories, reactions. We are labeled fixed, commodified by the attention economy. To be reborn in this age, the essay argues, is to refuse your last measurement.
To reject the label.
Yeah, to reject the limiting labels others, or even you yourself, have placed on you based on past collapses. This is the glitch gospel. That what was collapsed can rise, that the system's verdict is not final, that the soul is not a static bit, but a waveform returning.
A gospel for the digital age, maybe?
Perhaps. Even Jesus' resurrection in the Gospels has these glitch elements, doesn't it? Appearing and vanishing, translocating, being seen by some and not others. It's as if the kingdom he announced is now a quantum frame, visible only to those tuned into its frequency, to those who have eyes to see beyond the conventional collapsed reality presented to us.
Requires a different kind of seeing.
So resurrection as praxis, as something we do, isn't primarily about believing in some distant afterlife.
What is it then?
It's about creating conditions for re-coherence, for possibility to return right here and now.
And what does that look like practically?
It looks like making amends, cleaning up the wreckage of past collapses, holding space for someone's return, even when it's messy, refusing to collapse people into their worst act or define them by their struggles, remembering the dead with breath, with stories, not just despair.
And in community.
It's shared rituals that reset our collective rhythms. In trauma work, it's returning agency to the body, helping it find fluidity again. In digital space, maybe it's consciously preserving silence and paradox in a world screaming for hot takes and instant judgments.
Resurrection, finally, isn't a claim to be proven.
No.
It's a pattern, a rhythm, a phase shift from death to breath, from collapse to possibility, a refusal to accept finality in the face of ongoing potential and the power of entangled mercy.
We've taken a truly remarkable and maybe sometimes mind-bending deep dive today.
Definitely mind-bending.
Exploring how quantum collapse, human moral decisions, cutting-edge neuroscience, and ancient gospel ethics might offer a unified, profound understanding of our inner and outer worlds. We've seen how relentless noise can fragment us, how our very act of observation shapes reality, for good or ill, and how coherence, that state of wholeness and potential, can be lost, but also potentially restored, both individually and communally.
It's a powerful framework, isn't it? For understanding not just our struggles, our collapses, but also our incredible capacity for healing, for transformation, for re-coherence.
Yeah. And the essay posits that final miracle, that what dies does not vanish, that collapse is not the end. That in the entangled mercy of the kingdom, the waveform sings again, not as it was, but as it could be.
A transformed return.
Right. This, the essay concludes, is the core of the quantum gospel, that coherence can be held even through collapse, that judgment is not the final observer, that in love, in mercy, the wave returns.
It's a message of profound hope.
It really is. So as you go about your day, maybe mull over this provocative thought. The kingdom within isn't a geography or just a heaven after death. Perhaps it is the inward coherence of mercy. It is the field that remembers who you were before the collapse and whispers, come back.
And you can.
And you can. The Sermon on the Mount in this view is not just law, it is waveform ethic, a set of instructions for maintaining coherence and preserving potential in a noisy world. So, for you listening now, the question becomes, how will you live your life as a quantum gesture? Will you choose to preserve potential over premature collapse for yourself and for those around you? Did you hold open the waveform for another today? Did you help recohere what was broken or allow it to be recohered by grace? It's a profound invitation, I think, to a different way of being, a more merciful, more hopeful way of navigating this complex life.